Hello students, this is Geethanjali. In this video, we'll be starting with molecular basis of inheritance. So DNA is the short form of deoxyribonucleic acid. So you can see here, this is a nucleic acid. So a nucleic acid is nothing but a polymer of nucleotides, and specifically in this case, deoxyribonucleotides. So the length of DNA is usually measured in the terms of its number of nucleotides. Okay, so you can see here this organisms here, the number of nucleotides is basically a characteristic feature of a particular organism or species. So you can see even viruses here, like bacteriophages, have a particular number of nucleotides, and bacteria Escherichia coli has 4.6 into 10 to the power of 6 base pairs, whereas we humans have 6.6 into 10 to the power of 9 base pairs. Coming to the components that make up a basic nucleotide. So the nucleotide consists of 3 components, okay? A phosphate group, a sugar, and a nitrogen base. So in case of DNA, the sugar is deoxyribose. In case of RNA, it's just ribose. Okay, and the nitrogen base can be of 4 types. Okay, so we have adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. So adenine and guanine are called purines, whereas thymine and cytosine are called as pyrimidines. Purines have a single ring, okay, in their structure, whereas pyrimidines have 2 rings. Now, if you see this diagram here, it represents a polynucleotide. Okay, so a single strand of DNA it represents. So, first, what happens is we have a 5-carbon sugar, that is the deoxyribose. So, you can see the numbering goes from here. We have 1 carbon here, 2nd carbon here, 3rd carbon here, 4th carbon here, 5th carbon here, and this is just an oxygen atom. Okay, so first, to the first carbon atom, a nitrogen base is attached, okay, through a bond which is called N-glycosidic linkage or bond. So why is it called N-glycosidic linkage? Because it is a bond between 2 carbon atoms. Okay, so we have a carbon atom here in this base, and we have carbon atom here. Okay, to this previously OH was attached. So through the removal of water, a glycosidic bond is formed. So we know that glycosidic bonds are also found in polysaccharides, right? So here we find it between the base and the sugar. Now this structure, which is formed by the combination of a sugar and a base through a glycosidic bond, is called a nucleoside. Okay, and the nucleoside can be of the following types. okay, depending upon which base or which sugar is being involved. Moving to the next bond that we see here. So you can see over here at the fifth carbon atom, a phosphate group is attached. So similarly, what happens that before here OH was there, right? So here also, before the phosphate group was linked, there was a OH over here. So the phosphate group links with the OH of the fifth carbon, okay? And with the help of the removal of water, it forms a ester bond, an ester bond. Now, if you see two nucleotides over here, we have here the fifth carbon, and this phosphate group is attached to the fifth carbon of the previous nucleotide and attached to the third carbon of the next nucleotide. So that is why we call this a 3' dash 5' phospho, because phosphate is involved, diester bond, because here on this side there is a 3' carbon and here there is a 5' carbon. So we call this particular bond as phosphodiester bond between these two nucleotides. And you can see here always at the left end of a DNA, the phosphate group is free, whereas at the right end, the hydroxyl group is free. Okay, so this is called the 5' phosphate because again, this phosphate is attached to the fifth carbon, that's why. And here it is called 3' because this OH is attached to the third carbon. And you can see here that the main backbone of DNA is actually formed by the phosphate group and the sugar group. Okay, so the backbone of DNA is formed by the phosphate and the sugar group. This is because this base which is there, it in turn bonds itself with the opposite strand. Okay, so the opposite strand is again, there's a DNA and then there's a nitrogen base corresponding. So this is usually variable, okay, whereas this two parts, that is the phosphate and the sugar, these are fixed, right? That is why they form the backbone of the DNA. So this was some basics about the structure of DNA.